Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In the last video we saw the different types of loops that are used in the Python. In this video we will see the different plots that are used in Python. So let's start the presentation. So this is the agenda of my presentation. First of all, we will see what are actually plots. Then the types of plots that are used in Python, that is the line plots, histograms, bar graphs, scatter plots, pie plots, area plots, and then we will execute some examples by using the PyCharm. So for what purpose exactly the plots are used for? Plots are basically used for data visualization. By using the data visualization, one can easily interpret the given data and observe the effect of changing different variables. We can represent data in either pictorial or graphical form. We can also compare various graphs for easy analysis of the given data. In the given slide, the six different types of plots are shown that are used in the Python. That is the line plots, which is the simple graph obtained between two axes, that is the x-axis and y-axis. Then comes the bar graphs, which is used to compare various variables. The third one is the histograms, which is used to show the frequency of certain variables. The fourth one is the scattered plots, which are used to draw the dotted line between the two variables. The fifth one is the pie plots, which is used to show the percentage of various elements in a certain thing. And the last one is the area plot, which is used to indicate the area of the given curve. The first one is the line plot. So line plots are the basic graphs that are plotted between the two variables. For example, in the given slide, it is given that the graph has been plotted between the time versus the speed versus time. So the x-axis shows the time, the y-axis shows the speed, which is in meter per second. So the graph is plotted between these two variables. So this is the simple type of plot that is used in the Python. The next one is the bar graphs and histograms. So this slide basically show the difference between the bar graph and the histogram. As you can see that the bar graph is used to compare various variables. In the given graph, the x-axis shows the various languages, that is the Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, French and English, while the y-axis shows the number of speakers in crowds. So the bar graph is showing is comparing basically the different types of speakers with respect to the language. While moving towards the histogram, so the graph is showing the GDP with respect to time. So it is actually representing the frequency of the GDP with respect to the years, which is taken along the x-axis. So here is the major difference between the bar graph and the histogram. That is the bar graph compares variables, while the histogram shows the frequency of certain variables. The next one is the scatter plots. So scatter plots are actually used to show the dots between the two variables. So let's assume that I want to plot the scatter plot between the weight and height. So the given plot shows the scatter plot between the two variables. By the end of this presentation, we will execute some examples by using PyCharm. So then there is PyPlots. So assume that there is a bag, and the bag contains various types of fruits and other things. So the pie chart basically shows that the percentage of the various fruits that contains and other items that contains in a basket. That is the percentage of the apple, bananas, cherries and dates. Now the last one is the area plots. So as the name indicates, the area plots is indicating the area between certain curves. It is also known as stock plots. So let's assume that I want to plot the area plot between the weeks and the number of COVID-19 cases reported. So the two axes, the graph has been plotted between the two axes, and as shown in the figure, that the area between the graph is represented by different graphs. So now let's go to PyCharm to execute some examples. So first of all, the simple plot was the line plot. Let's assume that I want to plot my graph, the simple graph between the speed and time. So I have already written the code for the this graph. The x-axis is representing the time, the y-axis is representing the speed in meter per second. Then the matplotlib is the library which is used to plot the various plots inside the PyCharm or Python. So we are importing the pyplot as plt from matplotlib. So we are defining two variables, that is the axis and y axis, and then we write a command that plot.plot. We want to plot the graph between the x and y axis, and let's assume that I want to keep the color of my plot as green. So I will write as G, the first letter of the color. Then I am indicating the given graph as car speed. So after that, I am defining the title of my graph, that is the speed versus time graph. Then I am defining the two variables, the two axes, that is the x-axis and y-axis. After that, I want to show my graph by using the grid. So I have written a command as plot.grid is equal to true, and the color of the grid I can take any color. So let's write the yellow color, Y. Now let's execute this code inside the PyCharm. So that's my graph obtained from plotting the two variables. As you can see that the grid is having a yellow color, while the actual color of the graph is green. Let's assume that I want to compare two graphs, that is the speed of two motors. So what I can do, I can write two commands here, that is the x1 x versus y1 and x versus y2. I have already defined my three vectors, that is the x, y1 and y2. So I have already written a command to show the legend. So let's execute the code and see the output result. Now, as you can see that one of the line is in green color, while the second line is in red color. So by using these commands, we can compare various graphs. As you can see that the legend is already showing, which is the car 1 speed and car 2 speed. So next we are having the bar graph. Let's assume that I want to plot this graph in the pie chart. That is the number of speakers of a certain language. That is the Spanish, Chinese, Hindi, French and English. So in x-axis I will write the languages, while the y-axis I will show the number of speakers of a certain language. So let's execute the code inside the pie chart and see the results. So as you can see that this is my actually bar graph that is obtained by using the command as plt.bar, that is used for plotting the bar graph. So that the graph is showing the various number of speakers of a certain language inside the a specific country, a specific region. So that was the bar graph. The third one is the histogram. Let's assume that I want to show my number of students with respect to the number of grades that I have given them. So let's assume that I have given 3 A's, 2 A minus, 2 B plus and 4 B's. So I want to show my frequency of grades with respect to the number of students. So let's execute the code and see the output. So as you can see that the graph, the histogram is showing the number of students with respect to the grades that I have given them. So number of A's are 3, number of A minus are 2, the number of B plus are 2, again 2, and the number of B's are 4. So similarly, we can plot any type of histogram to show the frequency of certain elements. The fourth one is the scatter plot. So let's assume that I want to plot the graph between the weight versus height. So I have already defined the two vectors as x and y. Now execute the code to obtain the final results. So this is actually my scatter plot, which have been plotted between the weight in pounds and height in meters. So actually the scatter plots is showing the dotted points at certain axes. So that was all about the scatter plot, and in order to plot the scatter plot we need to write the command as plt.scatter, and inside the bracket we need to write the axes that are defined in the previous lines. So now moving on towards the area plots or stock plots. Let's assume that I want to plot this graph. I want to plot this graph inside the pie chart. So what I can do, I can define 3 vectors, that is the actually 4 vectors. The first vector is the weeks, number of weeks. The second vector is the covered patients of COVID-19. The third vector is the infected patients of COVID-19, and the fourth vector is the number of deaths that are caused by the COVID-19. So I have written the command for the 3 axes. Then I have written the command as plt.stack plot. So I need to plot the graph between the weeks versus the cured patients, infected patients, and number of deaths. And the colors of these three graphs will be green, yellow, and red as initiated by the starting alphabet, that is the G, Y, and R. So let's execute the code. So as you can see that my graph is has been plotted. The x-axis shows the number of weeks and the y-axis shows the number of COVID-19 cases that have been reported in a certain area. So this graph basically shows the area within the curve. Now last but not the least, the pie plots. So let's assume that I am having a basket, and the basket contains various items, various fruits such as apples, bananas, cherries, and dates. I want to plot a pie graph that shows the percentage of these four elements inside the basket. So I will simply write the command as plt.pie, and inside the brackets I will pass the variables, then the labels, colors. I have already defined a vector of colors, that is the red, blue, green, yellow. Then I want to start my pie graph at 0 angle, so I have set the start angle at 0. So let's execute the code to see the output. So as you can see that the graph has been plotted that shows the percentage of the various things, the various items that the basket contains. One more thing, you can also save the graph to your PC. So let's assume that I am saving my graph to this PC. So I will click on this icon, that is save the figure. I can save my figure at the place where I want to save it. So let's save it on the desktop. So you can rename your graph, and that will be saved in PNG extension. So let's save the graph. Let's open the graph. So this is my graph. Yes, so as you can see that the graph has been saved to PC. So that's all about the different types of plots inside the Python. Stay tuned for my next videos. Allah Hafiz.